Take care of daddy and mommy all by yourself. If you defy me, I'll divorce you and demand alimony. Do you really think such an outrageous demand will fly? I was flabbergasted as I looked at Roy. He stood there boldly, grinning at me. He must think I'll give in to his demands. Indeed, I've been accommodating in the past, thinking it was best for my in-laws. Regardless of Roy, I thought they were good people. But now, after seeing my mother-in-law's true colors, I can't even muster sympathy, let alone concern. I smiled at Roy. All right then, let's get a divorce. Don't say I didn't warn you. Talking back to your husband like that, you're not cut out to be a wife. Good riddance. Choosing your job over my parents, unbelievable. Oh, my apologies. Exactly. Even if I lost my job, I'd put my parents first. I'm not heartless like you. Roy's proud declaration. Then why didn't he take time off now? Instead of pushing it onto me, he should just take a break and help his parents. Blaming me without taking any responsibility himself. Well, don't talk to me at work anymore. I wish I had chosen a different company. Roy said, flaunting his exit, pushing me to my limits. Then you're fired. What? Fired? You're not my boss. Lost your mind from the divorce shock? Laughing, I revealed a truth unknown to Roy. I'm Vanessa, 40 years old. Running an apparel company. I started it at 26. Having lost my parents early, I set goals and focused to motivate myself. Decades later, I've worked relentlessly to stabilize the company. As friends married one by one. I had no time for relationships. Constantly traveling for work, both domestic and international. I can't even remember taking a break. Relatives and others criticized under the guise of concern. You'll be too old to have kids soon. Isn't it lonely, all that work? Arguing was futile, so I just smiled and left. My dedication paid off, with business booming. The effort I poured into most of my life paid off, with the company's performance steadily rising. Finally, I could take regular breaks and enjoy my personal life. At 38. I had no marriage aspirations, but was open to a good partner. That's how I was thinking. Then I met Roy. We connected over watching a soccer game. Encouraged by a subordinate, I went to see a game with a light heart, and there, I met Roy, who was cheering for the same team. We hit it off, and after watching a few games together, we started going out. Eventually, we began dating. He was lively and youthful. He had a wide range of hobbies and took me to various activities, from watching baseball games to playing video games, reading comics, and playing golf. Those moments with Roy were refreshing for someone like me, who had never spared time for fun. At 38, my first boyfriend made me giddy. Then one day, Roy asked, "Will you meet my parents?" Oh? If I were to get married, it'd be to Vanessa. That's why I really want to introduce her to my folks. It was about 2 months into our relationship when Roy sprung this on me. Though taken aback, I couldn't say no. I always looked forward to our time together. Things moved quickly, and a week later, we visited Roy's family home. Oh my! To be dating such a lovely lady, my son is one lucky guy. Truly. Such a wonderful woman. And Roy introduced a girlfriend to us, that's a first. He must be really smitten. I was endlessly praised by his kind parents, feeling both happy and embarrassed. Roy, proudly grinning next to me, quipped, "Right? Finding someone like her at 38 is a real catch." It might not sound great, but he meant it as a compliment. I felt confident we'd get along well with such wonderful in-laws. Relieved that the meeting went smoothly. There was just one thing that caught me off guard, Roy referring to his parents as mommy and daddy. It wasn't a common term among adult men in my circles, so it surprised me at first. But I figured it's just a family difference and tried not to mind. Roy obviously had a close relationship with his parents, often praising his mom in our conversations. It was endearing, though sometimes it felt a bit off. Like when the topic of cooking came up. What's your specialty in cooking, Vanessa? I wouldn't say I have a specialty, but I often cook meat dishes. At this, Roy eagerly chimed in. Yeah. She makes great meatloaf. It's decent, but compared to Mommy's. Hey, maybe you could teach her some recipes. I get that a son's fondness for his mom's cooking is natural. But it was a bit disconcerting to hear it put that way. Nonetheless, Roy's mother was delighted. Oh. Then I better jot down some recipes for Roy's sake. As we were getting ready to leave, a shocking revelation came. So, when are you two tying the knot? His parents asked. Roy's casual reply caught me off guard. I'd do it right now. It'd make life easier. Being a freelancer is tough financially. Wait, freelancer? That reminded me, when we first met, Roy was vague about his job, saying something like in sales, sort of. And I only told him I work in apparel, keeping it vague since we were just getting to know each other. Everyone has things they prefer not to discuss. I thought we could talk more about it as we got closer. But a freelancer, I never imagined. Seeing my stunned expression, Roy defensively explained. What's with that look? Surprised because I'm 38? But there's a good reason for this. Turns out, Roy's mom had always been frail and prone to illness. 2 years ago, his dad became ill and needed care. Roy, then working in sales at a steel company, quit to become a freelancer for the flexibility to care for his dad. Mommy couldn't handle it alone, right? I wanted to be there for my parents. I thought I'd be okay staying a freelancer for that. Roy glanced at his parents and nodded. But now that both are doing better, I'm thinking of getting a job again. Gotta step up if I'm gonna marry Vanessa. Roy. I felt ashamed for feeling disappointed that he was a freelancer. He prioritized his parents over his career. What a genuinely warm and caring person he is. On top of that, Roy mentioned he was considering re-employment for my sake. After our conversation, I thought for a bit and then made a suggestion to Roy. If you're okay with it, why not apply for a job at my company? What? Work at the same company as Vanessa? Yeah. It's a different field, but you were originally in sales, right? We're actually looking for salespeople right now. I meant well with my suggestion, but Roy made a face that clearly showed his dislike. I'd rather work somewhere I can make more money. I want to make Mommy feel secure. Did he think I wasn't earning much? I went on to explain about my company. Showing him the job site, I mentioned our annual revenue is around $10 billion, and talked about the salary and holidays. I also described other benefits. Roy, looking intently at the site, started to warm up to the idea. This might not be so bad. He ended up applying for a position at my company. Luckily, we were looking to significantly expand our sales team, so Roy got the job. Pressured by his parents, we soon got married. Who would have thought we'd both end up working at the same company? Indeed. By the way, which department are you in, Vanessa? I realized Roy still thought I just worked at the company. Not that I was the owner. I hadn't meant to keep it a secret, but it was somehow hard to bring up. It seemed like a good opportunity to tell him the truth. Well, actually, I was about to reveal it when Roy interrupted with a shocking remark. Whatever. I'll probably quit eventually anyway. What? I didn't understand what he meant. A bad feeling crept over me. Roy glanced at me, smirking in a way I'd never seen before. It made me shudder. What? Got a problem? No, it's not that. What do you mean? I'm not planning to quit my job. Oh, you mean if we have kids? But my company offers maternity and paternity leave. Kids are out of the question. Mommy and Daddy are already a handful. Mommy and Daddy? I tilted my head in confusion, and Roy mimicked my gesture mockingly. My parents. Didn't I tell you? They need care. Your father? But you said he's been doing better lately. That's why you are reemployed, right? Even if he's doing better, they're both elderly. Aren't you worried? Or what? As a wife, are you planning to shirk that duty? I was confused, trying to make sense of Roy's words. He was trying to push the care of his parents onto me. And from his tone, it seemed he expected me to quit my job eventually to prioritize their care. Look, I'm not saying quit right away. It's financially better if we both work. Just start coming with me to my folks' place on your days off. What's that about? I wasn't entirely unprepared for caregiving. I had intended to help and thought I could be of assistance in the future. But I never imagined being forced to regularly visit his parents' home and eventually being pushed into full-time caregiving. What shocked me the most was Roy's attitude. He seemed so positive and reliable before we got married, but after, he changed completely. Was this really the Roy I knew? I didn't want to believe it. I didn't marry this man to end up in such a situation. I wanted to escape reality, but Roy's angry voice relentlessly pulled me back. Listen, you're my wife now. Don't defy me. Understand? I was so stunned by the complete change in Roy that I couldn't bring myself to either agree or disagree. I regretted getting married. If I knew it would come to this, I should have never done it. The thought of divorce immediately came to mind. Society might frown upon a quick divorce. But the idea of spending more time with someone I disliked seemed like a waste of time. I prepared the divorce papers right away. The problem was the reason for the divorce and Roy's parents. The reason for divorce could be worked around. I can involve a lawyer. But Roy's parents were a more significant concern. As Roy demanded, we visited his parents' house every weekend. I didn't look forward to these visits as Roy's treatment of me was rough. But his parents seemed genuinely pleased every time. I'm sorry you have to spend your days off like this. No, it's fine. You're busy with work, Vanessa, and we do feel bad. But Roy is our only son, and having you here feels like our daughter has come to visit. Seeing his mother tearing up with joy, I couldn't possibly dismiss her when she said such things. Every time I visited, his mother would prepare my favorite sweets and her consideration was palpable. Despite not wanting to be controlled by Roy, I couldn't bring myself to mention divorce, seeing how happy it made his mother. 2 months into our marriage, Roy and I started visiting his parents separately. Due to conflicting schedules. Initially, I adjusted my schedule to fit Roy's. And I still hadn't told him about being the CEO of my company. I sensed it would only complicate things with the current state of our relationship. Luckily, Roy seemed oblivious to this fact, which I feared he might easily discover. Roy was not only a problem as a husband but also as an employee, causing several issues at work. I wanted to resolve these problems quickly and get a divorce. But what about his mother? She had been so kind, I didn't want to hurt her. Despite my turmoil, I headed to Roy's parents' house as usual. I had gotten used to entering their house without waiting. Today, as I was about to enter, I heard a familiar voice from inside. It was unmistakably Roy's voice. He was supposed to be at work today, maybe there was a change of plans. As I walked down the hallway, feeling awkward, I stopped dead in my tracks upon hearing the conversation. She's really not sharp, you know. And her housekeeping skills are so-so. She's serious, but couldn't you find someone better? It was definitely Roy's mother's voice. But it sounded completely different. Mean and spiteful, like a character from a daytime soap opera. Yet, unmistakably, it was her. The same woman who had always praised me. How could such a gentle person say such things? My heart clenched. I didn't want to hear more, yet my feet wouldn't move. Sorry, Mommy. But she's tall, so she can carry you if needed. And if I train her a bit more, she might turn out useful. Well, she's pleasant enough and financially supportive, so maybe it's okay for now. We'll see how it goes. Roy and his mother laughed, speaking freely. As I listened, my heart raced. They were talking about me. Roy's constant complaints were one thing, but hearing his mother's true colors shocked me. Roy's mother always seemed so appreciative, often bowing her head repeatedly in gratitude. We would laugh together while eating sweets or cooking meals. Regardless of Roy's intentions, I thought I had a good relationship with his mother. It was out of concern for her that I hesitated to go through with the divorce. Yet, from their conversation, it was clear that to her, I was just someone to take care of them. Moreover, she said something that felt like the final blow. For now, I just praise and flatter her. It makes her foolishly happy. Roy, you should learn from me. Hearing those words, I left Roy's parents' house as if fleeing. Later, after calming myself down, I contacted Roy's parents and Roy. I'm too busy to meet or talk for a while. I'll contact you again when things settle down. I ignored the multiple calls from both Roy's house and Roy himself. The voicemail recorded Roy's angry voice. Do you think it's okay to inconvenience Mommy like this? Apologize to her directly, right now. You have no right to refuse. As if I would comply with such demands. Of course, I ignored it. At work, I made sure to avoid Roy and stayed at a hotel after work. In the meantime, I steadily prepared for the divorce. Then, one day, Roy found me at work where he had been lying in wait. Hey, Vanessa! Roy looked like he was about to grab me, but seemed to hold back due to the public setting. I decided to talk with Roy in an available conference room. I've been looking for you. I called so many times. Do you have any idea how much I searched? Roy was furious. His breath was rough and his eyes, bloodshot with anger, glared at me menacingly. He stormed into the room and approached me, grabbing my wrist. Let go. Didn't I say that in the phone call? I'll contact you when I'm ready. Is there anything more important than Mommy and Daddy? Do you know how sad they've been without you? Sad? They were bad-mouthing me together, and yet he had the nerve to say that. I was shaking with anger. I wanted to silence him right there. To hurl every insult I could think of. But I was too worked up to speak, so I just glared at him. Roy continued, taking my silence as consent. They're suffering. Right now, they're hungry and have nothing to eat. Forget work today, just go back to them now. How dare he give me orders? We're not children, and it's not like they can't move. They need to stop being so dependent. I pushed his hand away and shouted. I have an important meeting later. I can't just take off for something like that. And if it's so important, why don't you take off work and go see them yourself? I shouldn't have to sacrifice so much for such people. Why should I throw away my significant work for them? Roy probably didn't expect me to fight back. He stumbled backward, surprised. You! Talking back to me! How dare you, as a wife? I've been thinking this for a while, but aren't your values skewed? What do you mean, as a wife? They're your parents. Shouldn't you be the one to take care of them before dumping them on me? Roy's work today was supposed to be just internal paperwork and meetings. Something that could be rescheduled or done another day, and the meetings wouldn't be too much of a hassle to postpone if he asked around. If his mother is so important, he should be the one taking time off. But he doesn't, which shows how much he truly cares. Yet, he tries to command me around. Roy's just a convenient mama's boy. It's so ridiculous it makes me sick. Huh? That's crazy. Why should I, the husband, have to grovel and take time off work to clean up your mess, the wife? Clean up what mess? Let's get this straight. Listen up. As my wife, taking care of my parents is your job. If you can't do that, you have no value as a wife. Roy blurted out his demands, puffing out his chest as if he was intimidating me. He looked like some playground bully. Not scary at all. What even is the value of a wife? Why do I need to be evaluated by him? So, what do you want from me? I asked, sighing. Roy sneered. Taking care of Mommy and Daddy is your job, wife. If you defy me, I'll divorce you and demand alimony. Does he really think such an absurd demand will work? I was utterly dumbfounded looking at Roy. He stood there boldly, grinning at me. He must think I'll give in to his demands because of my affection for his mother. True, I have been accommodating in the past, thinking it was best for my in-laws. I thought they were good people, apart from Roy. But now, after seeing his mother's true nature, I can't even muster sympathy, let alone concern. I smiled at Roy. All right then, let's get a divorce. Huh? Roy exclaimed in surprise. Do you even understand what you're saying? Yes. I can't be the wife you want, so let's divorce. If you want to claim alimony, go ahead. Whether I'll pay is another matter. I took out the divorce papers from my bag and handed them to Roy. I had been carrying them ever since I considered divorce. Are you serious? Do you realize what you're doing? Yes. Hurry up and sign. Roy was frozen in disbelief for a while. Losing patience, I said, "Oh, not divorcing? Just all talk, huh?" Red-faced, he hastily filled out the divorce papers. Checking the completed papers, everything was in order. I immediately handed them to my secretary to submit. Well, that makes us strangers now. As I said this nonchalantly, Roy spat out. You'll regret this. Arguing with your husband, you're not fit to be a wife. Good riddance. Choosing your job over my parents, unbelievable. Oh, that's too bad. Exactly. Even if I lost my job, I'd prioritize my parents. I'm not heartless like you, Roy proudly declared. Then why didn't he take time off now? Instead of pushing it onto me, he should just take a break and help his parents. Not doing so and just complaining to me is just shifting the blame. Then, don't talk to me at work anymore. I wish I had chosen a different company. Roy said this as he left, and that was the last straw for me. Then you're fired. That must have been the coldest tone I've ever used. Roy stopped in his tracks and turned around. What? Fired? You're not my boss, what are you talking about? Lost your mind from the divorce shock? Roy chuckled. Probably thinking it was a joke. I sighed softly and faced him. When our eyes met, Roy flinched, looking anxious. He must be bracing for what I would say next. I took a deep breath and calmly said, It's you who's mistaken. Don't you even know the face of your own company's president? Huh? No, that's not possible. Roy took out his phone and started looking something up. Gradually, the color drained from his face. He finally realized who I am. You're the president of this company? Finally got it, huh? His voice trembled pathetically. No, Vanessa, I didn't know. I didn't know? No, you just didn't bother to find out, right? I never brought it up, but he had plenty of opportunities to know. Even a simple search on his phone would have shown my name, if not my photo. Roy just never cared to look. Roy is just a convenient mama's boy who only cares about income and time off. Not really passionate about his work. That's why his performance at work is mediocre. To you, I was just an insignificant presence. What you and your parents wanted was a serious, hardworking wife who would take care of them. It didn't matter who, as long as she did the caregiving, right? Roy's face turned pale as he opened and closed his mouth, shaking his head. That's not true. If I knew you were the president, I wouldn't have made you do the caregiving. I would have taken care of mom and dad instead, and let you focus on work. So, as long as there's money, you can hire someone. I earn, and the caregiving is left to professionals, while you enjoy your life. Roy muttered a weak denial with a forced smile. Yes, if Roy had been more cunning, that could have been our future. Before I knew the true nature of his parents, if he had proposed like he used to, entertaining me, I would have agreed without question. I'll earn, so you can focus on caregiving, I would have said sincerely. If only Roy and his parents hadn't changed after the marriage, it could have been a viable future. Roy lost that opportunity himself. He looked up at me pleadingly, his eyes seemingly moist. Please, Vanessa. Let's start over. We were good together, weren't we? Let's go out again, okay? Please! True, you always took me to places I didn't know. Everywhere you took me was fun. Roy's face lit up with hope. Right? So, let's. But that was all an act to marry me. Life with you after marriage has been disappointing. I guess the divorce papers might be processed by now. I have a meeting to prepare for. I'll contact you about the termination. You can go home for today. I gathered my things, waved at Roy casually, and reached for the door. But before I could open it, Roy grabbed my left hand. I turned around to see Roy glaring at me. I glared back and asked, "Is there something else?" Something else? No. Our conversation isn't finished. Suddenly deciding on divorce, then telling me you're the president, and now firing me? That's too much. It's all too arbitrary. The divorce was your idea, remember? I never thought you'd agree. And you should have told me you were the president. Roy apparently intended to use the divorce as leverage to control me. The shock of finding out I'm the president must have hit him hard. Such a blame game is not what an adult should play. He never questioned why everything was so easily arranged for him. He's just blamed others all his life. I was so astonished that I was at a loss for words. Roy gritted his teeth in frustration. Regretting losing his cash cow, but that's not my concern. That's being too arbitrary yourself. You're just blaming others for your own unplanned and ignorant actions. Roy's face turned red with anger and he yelled, "Coward! How can a big company's president fire an employee for personal gain? That's unacceptable. That's right. This tyranny can't be allowed." Roy stood up, puffing out his chest, convinced he was right. His thinking is too immature. Always believing he's in the right. He's not taking anything I say seriously. I was so exasperated I had to hold my head. Seeing this, Roy smiled, thinking he'd won. "See? I hit the mark. Should I take this public? You're the one who'll be in trouble. You're too foolish. If you go public, you're the one who'll suffer." "What are you talking about?" I cut him off and started listing names. Sarah from HR, Michelle from sales, Susan, and Sophia from accounting. Who else was there? I asked Roy, who began to sweat and look uneasy. "What are you talking about?" "You know very well. These are the female employees you've been persistently inviting out. I've received complaints asking for help. Most of these employees don't know you're my husband. Only my secretary knows. The complaints I've been receiving are about you. Most of the employees don't know that Roy is my husband. Only my secretary is aware. Among all this, I received a concerning report. Michelle from sales has been persistently inviting me out, and it's troubling." At first, I doubted my ears. My own husband was approaching several young female employees. And from what I heard, no matter how many times they rejected him, he kept coming on to them. I was embarrassed and apologetic beyond words. "I was just trying to deepen relations as fellow employees. By specifically targeting women over a decade younger than you? And inviting them to hotels? What kind of relations were you planning to deepen?" There was evidence in the messaging app of Roy reaching out to these female employees. There was no way for him to talk his way out of this. "Your performance isn't great, and you've been a nuisance to other employees. It's a president's job to eliminate anyone causing harm to the company. But, oh, and the accounting department suspects you of embezzling funds. Surely you're not doing something so petty, right?" Roy looked away in silence. Unfortunately, this too seems to be true. A mama's boy who loves women and is stingy, and on top of that, causing trouble for others besides me. Disappointing as a husband and as a person. I'm disheartened by my own lack of judgment. I couldn't see him for what he was. All suspicions will be cleared before your termination, so don't worry. Now, I have a meeting to prepare for. You can go home today." Roy collapsed. Slumped over, muttering to himself. He must have realized it was all too late. I left him there and exited the room. Later, investigations confirmed all suspicions about Roy. He apologized to the female employees and then resigned voluntarily. Roy, now unemployed, returned to live with his parents. Later, he tried to start working again as a freelancer, but something unexpected happened. His father needed care, and his mother had been managing. Thanks to that, Roy only had to help out occasionally. However, recently, his mother began showing signs of dementia. Wandering at night. He now had to deal with a father who needed physical care and a mother who was generally fine but occasionally showed symptoms of dementia. I can't get a moment's peace. I'm running out of money. Help me, Roy pleaded. Had the divorce been amicable and had there been no hard feelings with his parents, I might have helped. But they looked down on me as just a caregiver. There's no room for sympathy. I'm sorry, but I can't help. As we're now strangers, please refrain from further contact. Depending on the situation, I may take appropriate actions. After that, Roy stopped contacting me. Post-divorce, I decided to live alone, swearing off marriage. However, just as I made up my mind, someone I've known for years through work confessed to me. Traumatized by Roy, I thought of declining, but having known him for a long time and knowing he's sincere, I accepted his offer to date. Whether it leads to marriage or not, I'm unsure and somewhat skeptical about another change post-marriage, but he's the most peaceful person I've met. Also, as fellow business owners, we have a lot in common. Unlike with Roy, he's truly a partner. If I can spend my future with him, I hope this happiness lasts. With that wish, I continue to work hard today.